In this video, we shall now turn our attention to the place values of decimal numbers and their standard value. First, I want to start by asking, how do you identify a decimal number? Have you seen one before? Have you seen a decimal number before? Alright, come, let me show you this on the board. 72.316. This is a decimal number. This number given, 72.316, is a decimal number. So how do we identify a decimal number? Simply, you must see a decimal point. And then after the decimal point, you have digits. You have what? Digits after it. The digits should not be all zeros. That is to say, all the digits should not be zeros. It's possible for you to have 0 there, but all of them will never be 0. You must have non-zero digits in it. In fact, in this 72.316, there is no 0 there even in the decimal part. I could give you something like 2.05. Is that okay? So, a decimal number is simply identified by a decimal point. What is our decimal point? Look at it. This point is called a decimal point. Now, if you look at this number, you will notice that a decimal number always have two parts. Are you following, right? Look at this. 72 is called the whole number part. This 72 appeared before this decimal point, which means if you're given any decimal number, the numbers on the left side of the decimal, the numbers you will see before you meet the decimal point, that number is called the whole number part. And then after the decimal point, you have other digits. Those digits are called the decimal digits. Is that okay? The decimal digits. So here 316 are the decimal digits there. Please, it's important that I say this so that you take note of how we read decimal numbers. These decimal digits are not up to 0. That is, decimal digits are less than 0. Don't forget that. That is why when I read this 72 points, when I came to this, you didn't hear me say 316. That is not the correct way of reading it. We read them digit by digit. 316. So you pronounce the whole number together, 72. Points, coming to the decimal digit, you have 316. You mention the digits one after the other. Having said this, let us now move on to the decimal number place values and the symbols we use for them, as well as their standard values. So there are some of them I've written here on the bar, okay? You're expected to know them, although they continue as well too. I stopped at 100 millions. You also have billions, tens of billions, hundreds of billions, but I decided to stop at millions there, okay? Now, the first decimal place value is tenths. That's the first place value of decimal number is tenths. That is the starting decimal place value of decimal numbers. That is the starting place value of decimal numbers, which means we don't have anything like units when dealing with the decimal digit part. Is that okay? Come back to this once again. After the decimal point, the first decimal digit is 3. The place value of this 3 is tenths. There is no unit when talking about decimal parts. You only talk about units in the whole number part. Just like you learned in the previous video when we treated place value of whole numbers. You say the first place value of whole number is unit, in this case 2. When you come to the decimal digits, the first place value is tenths. There is nothing like units in decimal digits. Take note of that, please. Now, let us get back to this. Our first place value for decimal number is tenths. We use T and then TH on top. Alright? The standard value is 0.1. Remember, this thing is taken from 10. 10 is 10. Tenths is like you're doing the opposite. You interchange the position of the 0 and 1. Then you put a point. So instead of 10, you have 01. After the first 0 digit, you put points, and then you have your 1. Now this 0.1 can be written as 1 over 10. You know, just like you turned it upside down. Remember, 10, you interchange. You have 01 instead of 10. That's what you're seeing here, 01, which is 0.1. You must put the point after the first 0 digit. So coming to that of 10, you can write it in fraction form as 1 over 10. And that 1 over 10 is the same as 10 raised to the power minus 1. This minus 1 telling you that minus, okay, you have 0 before the non-zero digits. Okay, so 10 raised to the power minus 1. This one is the number of 0 before you see your 1. Let us move on to the next one, hundredths. The place value of decimal number. The second one is hundredths. And we use H. TH for it. The TH is written on top, okay? Now, what is the standard value of hundredths? The standard value of hundredths is 0.01. That 0.01 can still be written as 1 over 100. And you can still write it in terms of powers of 10. You can write it as 10 raised to the power minus 2. This minus telling us that we have zeros before the 1. We call it inverse actually, but don't worry. We're going to talk about inverse in other classes to come when we learn indices. Did you take notes of something here? You see, this hundredths is actually gotten from 100. Now, 100 is 100. So, hundredths for decimal will now be like interchanging the position of the zeros and 1. The zeros will come before the 1. In 100, we have 2 zeros. So, that's going to be 0, 0, 1. Now, after the first 0, you put your decimal point. Then 0, 1. That is what we have here. Okay, the next place value is thousands. Thousands. Thousands, the symbol is TH, then TH on top. Okay, now what is the standard value of thousands? Simply think back to what you learned about thousand when we learned whole numbers. 1000 is 1000. That's 3 zeros. But 1 will come before. That is for whole numbers. Now when you talk about decimal numbers, thousands, zeros will come before 1. How many zeros? 3 of them. After the first 0, you put your decimal point. Then you now have 001. That is why the value is 0.001. This 0.001 can still be written in fraction form as 1 over 1000. And now when you choose to write it in terms of powers of 10, it's going to be 10 raised to power, you put minus before 3. The 3 is showing the number of zeros you have. And then the minus telling you that you are doing an inverse. Something like doing something, interchanging it, okay? Zeros coming before 1. Alright, let's move on to the next decimal place value, which is 10,000s. 10,000s, this is the symbol TTH, then a TH on top. In 10,000s, you have 4 zeros before 1. Remember, after the first 0, you put your decimal point. Now, if you take your mind back to whole number, when we learned about 10,000. Now, 10,000 is 1, then 4 zeros. Is that also? 1 and what? 4 zeros. So 1 comes before. If you come to decimal part, the zeros will come before 1. So you will have 4 zeros and then 1. In the 4 zeros, after the first 0, put your decimal point. Then I have 0001. That's just the idea. Look at the value. You can write it in fraction form. It's going to be 1 over 10,000. You can say that here. Then if you choose to write it as powers of 10, it will now be 10 raised to power, you put minus and then write 4. Where 4 tells you the number of zeros you have there. Are you getting? The next place value of a decimal number is 100,000. This is the symbol. In 100,000, you have 5 zeros before 1. Always remember, after the first zero, you put your decimal point. You can write it as 1 over 100,000. And in powers of 10 to be 10 raised by minus 5. This continues. Okay, I decided to stop at 100 millions. Let's look at that of 100 millions. The symbol is HM, then TH on top. Now, in 100 million, how many zeros do you think you would have? You know that 100 million in whole number is 8 zeros. So the same thing, 100 millionths in decimal number is going to be 8 zeros. But the zeros will appear before 1. And that's what we have here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 zeros. After the first zero, you put your decimal point. So you now have 7 zeros before the 1. But altogether, the number of zeros is 8. You can write it as 1 over 1 million. And then in powers of 10, you can write it as 10 to the power of minus 8. Why not continue this up to trillion? When I taught you whole numbers, the place value and standard values of whole numbers, we took it up to trillion, is that not so? So why not go back, check what we did there for whole numbers. Then, you can just try and see what happens for billion, for 10 billion, for 100 billion, for trillion, for 10 trillion, for 100 trillion. Remember, the zeros will come before. Billions, 10 billions, 100 billions, trillions, 10 trillions, 100 trillions. Let us see how we arrange the place value of decimal numbers. Now, if you want to arrange the place value of decimal numbers, this is what you should know. Before you start writing the decimal digits, you must have your decimal point. Does that make sense? Then after the decimal point, remember we said to the right of the decimal point, you have your decimal digits. And then to the left of the decimal point, you have your whole numbers. Our interest is that of decimal digits. So we have these place values. This is the way we arrange it for the decimal digits. The first is tens, followed by hundreds, followed by thousands, 10,000s, 100,000s, millions, 10 millions, 100 millions, billions, 10 billions, 100 billions, trillions, 10 trillions, 100 trillions, in that order. Does that make sense? This is how we arrange the place value of decimal numbers. And when you are filling them, you start from tens. You start filling from tens, you move on to hundreds, you move on to thousands, you keep going. That's the way you fill. Now, you remember, for whole number, you start filling from the units and then you move to the left. For decimal digits, for decimal numbers, if you come to the decimal part, you start filling from tens, you move to the right. This way. For decimal numbers, for decimal digits. Whole numbers that we've learned before is this way. Am I communicating? That's good. Now let me tell you something very important. Please put it down. You see these place values, right? The greatest, the biggest, the highest place value in decimal digits is tens. Any number under tens is greater than a number under hundreds. A number under hundreds is greater than a number under thousands, in that order. Take note of that. You remember for whole number, starting with unit. Unit is the smallest. Unit is smaller than tens. Tens is smaller than thousand. Tens is smaller than 100. 100 is smaller than 1,000. 1,000 is smaller than 10,000, and in that order for whole numbers. But if you come to decimal digits, the decimal part, tens, which is the starting point, is the greatest number, is the highest number, is the biggest number. Tens is bigger than hundreds. Hundreds is bigger than thousands. So look at this number now. The value, this 3 is greater than the value of this one. The value of this one is greater than the value of this 6. I hope you get that right. So once again, in decimal digits, the 10th place value is the greatest, is the highest. Put that down, okay, in your notes. Alright, I've explained this before. If I give you a decimal number, you should be able to know the part that is the whole number and the part that is the decimal digit part. That's the decimal number part. Alright, this is much you should know about decimal place values, okay? Now, let us look at this question we have on the board. What is the place value of 6 in 72.316? To solve this is very simple. 72.316. This 7, the place value is tens. This 2, the place value is units. Then you have your decimal point. 316. This 3, the place value is tens. 1 is hundreds. 6 is thousands. So you see the place value of 6 in that number is thousands. Okay, but let me write it out. The highest place value here is this one of 7, which is 10. Then followed by units. After that, you have your decimal points. Then, following the decimal points, the first place value is tens. After that, you have hundreds. After that, you have thousands. And then, we can arrange these numbers under them, 72.316. We are looking for the place value of 6. And so I can write the place value of 6 is thousands. So that's just the answer. We shall pick yet another question and see. Now we have these two questions on the board, alright? Question 2 and 3. I'm trying to be fast in solving them. Is that okay? Let's look at what the question said. What is the place value of the circled digit in 0.94? 4 was circled for us. Now let us solve question number 2 first before we move on to question 3, okay? Solution to question number 2. Now, we have 0.94 and we are asked to find the place value of the circled digit 4. That PV there represents place value, you know that. And so I can just look at this. There is the whole number part, 0, and the place value is unit. Then you have your decimal point. After the decimal point, you have 9, the first decimal digit. Its place value is tenths. And then come to this 4, which was circled for us. After tens in the decimal part, you have your hundreds. So you see clearly the place value of all there is what? Hundreds. And that's your answer. But of course, you know I like showing you the working so you understand this even more clearer. Now I'm going to write out the place values for the number we have there. The first is units, then we have our decimal point. After that, we have a digit for tenths, and we have a digit for hundreds. Let's fix up these digits under these place values. I will tell you why it's important and why I always write out their place values. Even though I can say or write the answer without all these things. But I'll tell you why I've been doing this for you. Very important. Okay, now this 0 will come under units, then we'll have our decimal point. 9 will come under tenths, 4 will come under hundreds. And then 4 was circled for us. The question said, what is the place value of the circled digit? So, the place value of the circled digit is hundreds. So that's the answer. The place value of the circled digit, 4, because 4 is the circled digit here. Its place value is hundreds. This will take us to solution to question number 3. In that question number 3, we are asked the place value of the underlined digits in 6,325.6911 is dash and dash. So there are two digits here whose place value we are asked to find. You notice that in the whole number part, I followed our normal rule of putting comma in numbers once the number is up to 4 or more digits. You count 3 digits from the right. 1, 2, 3, and then you put your comma. You don't do that for decimal digits. You don't go put in any comma in the decimal digits. Is that okay? You only do that for whole numbers. Alright, let's move on, please. This 6 is the highest place value in the whole number. And it is under thousands if you check. Because this 5 is unit, 2 tens, 3 hundred, and then 6 will be thousand. Okay, so the place value there for the whole number part, 1,000, 100, tens, and what? Units. Then you have your decimal point. In the decimal point, the first digit there is 6, and that comes under tens. You know, the first decimal place value is tenth. And so I'm going to write tenth. After tenth, you meet 9 there, and that 9 will come under hundreds. After that, you meet this one, which will come under thousands. After that, you meet the second one, which will come under 10,000. Okay? And now we are asked to find the place value of 6 and 1. Let's fill up these numbers under their respective place values. Let me start with that of the decimal part. 6 is the first one, which comes under tenth. And then we have 9 under hundreds, this one under thousands, the second one under tens of thousands. Now 6 and this last one were underlined for us. That is where our question is based. Anyway, let me fill up that of the whole number. 5 will come under unit, 2 under tens, 3 under 100, and then 6 under 1,000. We don't have business much with that part. These are decimal points. Let us now focus on our question. The place value of 6 is tenths. You can see it clearly from there. And then the place value of this last one there, you can see that it is 10,000. And so I will write the place value of 6 is tenths. Then the next one, the place value of 1 is, that's the last one there, is tens of thousands. And that's simply the answer to this question, which means this dash, this gap will be filled with tenths, representing the place value of 6. And then this gap, this dash, is meant to be filled with 10,000. Alright, representing the place value of this underlined 1. And that's how simple we solve this question. Now, why is it that although I could have answered this question directly by looking at them and then working on the place values there, I could have answered the questions directly. But if you notice, for all the questions we've been solving under place values and values, starting from whole numbers up to this point, we are dealing with decimals. I've always written out the place values. I've always arranged it and then place the digits under the respective or under the correct place value before giving my answer to the question. The reason is for you to get used, for you to understand and learn very well how place values are arranged and how the numbers are correctly placed under their place values. This is very important for us. As we move on in other topics, you're going to see why it's important. Talk about addition, talk about subtraction, talk about multiplication. You need all these things to guide you. Talk about Roman figures, all right, Hindu, Arabic numerals, all these things you have to understand and know how to arrange place values correctly so you don't land yourself into trouble there. Talk about approximation, rounding up and rounding down. Are you following? Because round off. All these things you need to understand how to arrange place values so that when I teach you those topics, you will enjoy them, okay? And therefore, make sure you learn this arrangement very well. We shall now pick questions on values of a decimal digit and solve. Remember, the ones we've solved so far, the first 3 questions, are based on what? Place value. So what if you're asked to get the value of a particular decimal digit? This question number 4 and 5 will help us to learn how we can determine, how we can get the value of any decimal digit. Let us look at these questions. Number 4, what is the value of each decimal digit in 63.5201? Question 5, find the value of 3 in 0.73. This is really very simple. Remember, I have told you already under place values of whole numbers and values of whole numbers how you can get the value of any digit in any given number. I told you that what you should do is simple. Multiply the digit by the standard value of the place value of that digit. So I think all we need here is to know the standard value of our place values, which is why that was always the first thing I started with, showing you the place values and their standard values. Let us solve these 2 questions on the board. Number 4, solution. Now we have this number. Once again, I'm going to write out their place values. This 6 is tens, and then 3 is units. So I actually have tens and units in that number. Then we have a decimal point. This 5 is tens, that's a decimal digit. This 2 is hundreds, and then 0 is thousands. Then 1 is 10,000. These are the place values of this digit. Let us fix the digits under them. Are you ready? This 3 is units. So even if this question is not based on whole numbers, I just have to still fix them for you. Like I said, it's very important that you know how to arrange and arrange place values and fix up numbers that belongs to them. Okay, 5 is under 10, so we'll start filling that way. 2 will come under hundreds, 0 will come under thousands, and 1 will come under 10,000. I will now start. My problem is to get the value of this decimal digit. So I'll start with 5. The value of 5 is 5 times the standard value of the place value of 5. The place value of 5 is tenths. What is the standard value? You remember that the standard value is 0.1, or in fraction form you can write it 1 over 10, or in that is powers of 10, you can write it as 10 raised to the power minus 1. I'm going to write all of them here on the board, okay? So the standard value of tenths is 0.1 in decimal, so it's going to be 5 times 0.1. And if you multiply this, what will you get? 5 times 0.1 will give us 0.5. It's simple. Look at it. You do 5 times this one, you get 5. Then you do 5 times 0. Before then you have your decimal point. 5 times 0 is 0. Remember, 0 times a number will give you 0. Is that okay? So that's the answer for the first one. Or I want to do something. If you want to write it using the fraction form, it's going to be 5 times. Remember that the standard value of tenths in fraction is 1 over 10. And if you do that, you do 5 times 1, numerator or multiply numerator, that will give us 5, then over 10. If you do this 5 over 10, you still get 0.5. 5 over 10, to get the answer in decimal, you just write out this 0 here. How many zeros do you have in 10? Just 1. So you put your 1 0, then write that numerator there, which is 5. Then between 0 and 5, put your points. Alright, let's move on. Or we can still get our answer in another form. Or we can do this 5. Want to get a value? We do 5 times the standard value of tenths in powers of 10. I know that standard value in powers of 10, tenths is 10 raised to the power minus 1. Okay? I'm sorry, let me use my blue marker. 10 raised to the power minus 1. So that if you multiply this, 5 times 10 raised to the power minus 1 will still give you 5 times 10 raised to the power minus 1. So any one of these is the answer, is allowed. 0.5, 5 over 10. 5 over 10 can still be reduced to 1 over 2. Because 5 can divide 5, you get 1. 5 can divide 10, you get 2. So 1 over 2. And then 5 times 10 raised to the power minus 1 is still another answer. But I prefer leaving the answer like this one, okay? Or this one. But take note, any one of them can come. In your quiz, you may see just any one of them. Okay, please, I've shown you how you can write the answer in any of the 3 cases using the standard values. Let's now move on to the value of 2. I will be presenting my answer in decimal. Is that okay? So I won't bother you with this one again. The value of 2 is 2 times the standard value of the place value of 2. The place value of 2 here is hundreds. The standard value of hundreds is 0.01. Remember? So I'm going to multiply 2 by 0.01, which is the standard value of hundreds. Now if you multiply this, you get 0.02. 2 times 1 will give us 2. 2 times 0 will give us 0. Before multiplying 2 by this 0, you have your decimal point. Then 2 times this 0, you have your 0. So 0.02 is the answer. Let us move on to the next one. The next one is the value of 0. So I'm going to write the value of 0 is 0 times we're going to multiply that 0 by the standard value of the place value of 0. The place value of 0 here is thousands, and the standard value of thousands is 0.001. So I'm going to multiply this 0 by 0.001. And 0 times 0.001 will give us 0. 0 times a number is equal to 0. Let us move on to the last digit there, the place value of 1. The value of 1 rather. The value of 1 is, now we are going to do 1 times the standard value of the place value of 1. The place value of 1 is 10,000. The standard value of that 10,000 is 0.0001. There are 4 zeros before 1 there. 0.0001. Now, if you multiply this, the answer you are going to get will be equal to 0.0001. You still get this. Remember, 1 times a number will give you that number. We are done with the first question. We have gotten the value of each decimal digit there. So we will now move on to the value of 3 in 0.72. That is question number 5. But before we move on to question number 5, do you have any question on the solution to question 4? Take a look. If you have a question, please quickly send the question across and you get a response. So we move on to question number 5, the solution. What we have is 0.73, so the place value 0 is units, 7 is tenths, and then we have 3, which is under hundredths. Fixing up these digits, this is going to give us 0 under units, 0.73, 7 under tenths, 3 under hundredths. So for us to get the value of 3, this is my interest. Let me circle it for you. That's where my question is based. To get the value of 3, I'll first of all get the place value of 3. I'll ask myself, 3 is under what place value? Or what's the place value of 3? There. The place value of 3 is hundreds. I'll now ask myself, I want to get value of 3 there. What is the standard value of this place value of 3? So what is the standard value of hundreds? The standard value of hundreds is 0.01. Therefore, the value of 3 is 3 times that standard value, 0.01. And if you multiply 3 by 0.01, the answer you are going to get is 0.03. 3 times 1 will give you 3. 3 times 0 will give you 0. Then you have these decimal points. 3 times this 0, you get 0. And this is our answer. Now we are done solving questions on place values and values of whole numbers and that of decimal numbers. Watch these videos over and over and over again, okay? Make sure you understand the idea of place values, know place values, know their standard values, know their symbols as much as possible as well too. Their standard value is very important. Learn how you arrange these place values. Learn how you fix numbers under these place values correctly. If you have any question, feel free to send the question across, okay? If you understand all that have been taught already under place values of whole numbers and decimal numbers, then feel free to take the quiz below this video. Is that okay? You have a quiz below this video. Take it, 10 questions. Your target score is 10 over 10. That shows how well you understand the topic. What are we looking forward to learn in our next class? We will be looking at how to write numbers in words and in figures. Please, you need a good knowledge of place values in order to be able to understand that as well too. Does that make sense? And so before the next class, make sure you practice your place values very well.